all we can do is control what is in our own hands. We can't control external factors. I can't be stressed about the rain. I can't be stressed about what someone else is doing. All I know is that this is what I'm doing. And if I feel good and I can, look at the bright side of the situation, then that's all I can do. And so it's taken multiple years to get to this
Welcome to
place.
Imposterix Podcast Season 4. My name is Whitney and I am your host. Thanks for joining us for this episode. I am excited to jump into it. Imposterix Podcast validates professionals of color navigating imposter experiences and racial toxicity within their careers. And this season, we are focusing exclusively on pouring into Black women. How can we take care of the Black women in our lives? If we are a Black woman, how can we pour into ourselves? How can we receive the pour from others? So this episode is going to be about that and all the episodes within this season. So sit back, get your listening ears on. Let's get into it. Welcome to this episode of Imposterix Podcast. Today we are speaking to Victoria Gibbs. I am looking forward to this conversation as usual, but today we're going to be talking not only about getting physically active and moving our body and how we can use that type of wellness to pour into ourselves, but we're also going to talk about why it's so important. And Victoria will share with us a little bit of her journey as someone living with lupus and how she uses yoga and other types of practices to pour into herself and keep her body at optimal performance so that she can live this life, right? So I am looking forward to learning because lupus is something that affects Black women of color, my community so profoundly, but it's something that I think as someone who does not have lupus, I'm not I'm not hearing a lot of conversations about it. And I think after we talk a little bit more and learn from you, Victoria, about what your experience has been, and I've done a little bit of research, it'll become apparent why we need to be talking about it because there are so many forms that it can take and so many types of symptoms that we might have that we may not notice or know to think of when we're thinking about lupus. So, with that, Victoria, I would love for you to introduce yourself to our listeners. Tell us who you are and the identities that you're bringing to this conversation.
So, thank you for having me. As you mentioned, my name is Victoria Gibbs. I am 39 years old. I grew up in Princeton, New Jersey, and my passion for movement started at a very young age. I began dancing classical ballet at 4 years old and was on a pre-professional track all the way through high school until a knee injury kind of took me off of that path, and I decided to attend college. I went to Dartmouth College, and even while there, I was still very much in the movement community. I joined the dance ensemble, and after graduating and experiencing a couple of traumatic life experiences, I took a pause on ballet and actually never picked it back up again. And so over the years, I finally decided that I needed to do something to kind of get my body moving, get my mind right, and just work through some of the demons that I had been plagued with over the years. And so, while working a job at a hedge fund, I stumbled upon a hot yoga studio. And I decided to go into the studio and take my first class the next day, and I never looked back. It has been something that has given me so much life and meaning. It has been a wonderful mental journey, more so than physical.
Mm.
I've been able to work through a lot of the issues that I was dealing with over time, and yoga has truly become my therapy. And after a diagnosis of lupus in June of 2016, I poured into my yoga practice even more, diving deeper into the mental benefits such as meditation, which has really allowed me to navigate my symptoms very mindfully and has helped me to really just live my best life. And now I take my time to teach people, educate them, create content surrounding both lupus and yoga and its benefits. So I'm very happy to be here to be talking a little bit more about that journey.
Yeah, thank you. I'm curious about why ballet at such a young age? Was this just like your parents put you in ballet? Because so I'm a parent of a 4-year-old and I'm kind of just like gonna start throwing him in all the things to see if anything sticks. Do you think that's what your parents were doing? Or was it more of like you were interested in ballet and it kind of took off?
No, my parents were definitely interested in ballet. My mom grew up in Jamaica and she used to dance growing up. And
Mm,
so she remembered all of the values that it instilled in her as a child and how she took those same values throughout her adult life. And so she wanted the same thing for me. For her, it taught her a lot of, poise, grace, discipline, motivation, and very much so, it was the same with me. At first, it was a little bit challenging. I didn't necessarily love it right off of the bat, especially being the only woman of color or child of color at that time
mhm,
in the ballet circle. It was a little bit challenging at first because I didn't have anyone to identify with. But I did have one black teacher, and her name was Cheryl Whitney, and I still see her to this day. We actually
mm.
go to the same church, and so when I'm back home visiting my family, I always run into her, and she poured a lot of love and time and energy into my dance journey specifically. She wanted the most for me. She wanted me to be 10 times better. And she drilled everything into me really hard to the point where I was like, I don't know if I want to do this anymore.
Yeah.
And my parents were like, no, you're going to keep going. You don't just start something and give up because it's challenging. You stick through it. And I'm so glad that I did because I'm the person that I am today because of it. And she was a very pivotal part of that experience for me.
I had a childhood dance teacher, her name was Verlene, and similarly, she was she was like a huge kind of person, a huge figure in my life when I was a young child, and we dance was like another sport that we did type of thing. So it was like dance and softball and soccer and basketball and tennis and all these things. And it did not end up becoming like one of the areas that focused on as we continued to grow up. But um, a lot of the kids in our community danced and taught under Verlene, and we were all kind of it was just a very special moment, I think, for us to be a part of this group of kids that was very multicultural group of kids who did what did they call it? The type of dance. It was basically like I want to call it free dance, but I don't think it was called that. Creative dance. Yes, creative
Creative
dance.
dance.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, that sounds right.
Right, for, little kids, basically doing whatever you want, right? But learning some of the basic steps and postures and stuff like that. And I just remember it being so fun and so liberating in a way that I didn't experience with sports, with other, I guess, other types of sports. And so it was, yeah, listening to you talk about your teacher reminds me of Verlene. She unfortunately passed away within the last couple of years. And, even then, she was that type of teacher where she touched so many people that lived in this geographic area. Um, that, when news came out that she had passed away, it was like our community felt it long and far. Um, so, yeah. Okay, cool. That satisfied my curiosity. Um, so, one of the things that I wanted to start with is just learning a little bit more from you about your experience living with lupus. I have a very limited experience, and I know I shared with you offline that I grew up having a friend that had lupus, a boy, actually. I learned today and yesterday as I was doing my research that lupus is, or 90% of people with lupus are women. And so I grew up with this kid, and I never understood. I would go visit him in the hospital. Um, his eyes were yellow because I think he also had sickle cell. Um,
Mm.
and all I knew was that he was sick. And even in adulthood, as I run into people in my life, family members who have lupus, or other Black women, it's always Black women. That's not true. I know one white woman with lupus, and I remember being like, and she was like, "Yes, I know. I'm white and I have lupus." Um, but as I've, spoken with people over the years, it just seems it's always seemed very vague to me. Um, Very much like I don't understand how lupus impacts people, what the effect is. Um, and so I wonder if you could share a little bit about like your experience with lupus, understanding that everybody's experience is different. But yeah, I'd love to hear from you, like what happens with your body. So then we can talk about how yoga and these other things that you're doing help your body. So let's pause a minute and just get real. You do everything for everybody. But have you taken a moment to care for future you? Getting your affairs in order isn't just about wills or trusts, it's about peace of mind for you and love for those that you leave behind. Ideally, we should all have an estate plan. And if you're in Georgia, Wills for the People can help you out. But if you're not ready yet to create your will or trust, there's something that you can do that will go a long way in helping the future you. And that is to get organized. The I Plan for This Life Organizer for when it's needed is a workbook designed to help you organize your life with clarity and ease, making it so that if someone needs to care for you or for your affairs because you're not able to, they have all of the information that they need. No stress, no confusion, just a record made by you, about you. Visit willsforthepeoplega.com to get your copy because you deserve to be prepared and to have your loved ones prepared. Again, that's willsforthepeoplega.com and click on the workbook tab. Back to the show.
It was very interesting. Before I was diagnosed, I was actually preparing for a yoga competition. There's like a little world of competitive yoga, and I found myself in it as kind of like another, performance experience, so to speak. And so I was training very intensively and in the hot yoga room every single day. And I eventually noticed that my body stopped sweating in the hot room, which is like highly unusual. It's 104 degrees with like 80% humidity.
Wow.
If you walk into the room, you should just start dripping in sweat. And so I noticed something was a little bit off, and then it just progressively got worse and worse. My hair started falling out in like massive chunks, and I lived with my aunt at the time, and she's like a very much a hair person. And so she was like, "Oh, you're just not taking care of it properly." And I was like, "No, I really don't think that's the case. Like, there are bald patches on my head. Like, I don't understand what's happening." And my face blew up like chipmunk cheeks. And I was working at the hedge fund at the time, and so I was going into work every day, and my colleagues started to notice that, like, something was definitely not looking right. uh, and it basically turned into like what seemed like a long episode of the flu. So
Mm.
instead of going to see real doctors, I went into urgent care specialists for quite some time. And they kept sending me back home with, like, a pack of steroids or just something. So it helped me out for a little bit, but then obviously the symptoms would just come raging back in full effect. And it started to get really bad when my motor skills began to decline,
Mm.
and I had an extreme sensitivity to light. And so I managed to continue training throughout all of these symptoms, high fevers, night sweats. And I went to Jackson Hole, Wyoming for this national competition. And I got on stage, and as soon as the bright lights went on, I basically like collapsed to the floor. Like I couldn't see anything. Everything just turned black. My body literally crumbled underneath me. And I got back on the plane back home, and I just like didn't go back to the yoga studio. I didn't go back to the office. I was like, I need some time. I don't know what's happening. And my dad, he and I speak every day, and he
Mm.
called me, and I wasn't recognizing his voice over the phone anymore. I was like who am I speaking to? And
Wow.
he was like, something is drastically wrong. So I managed to get myself home from Long Island back to Princeton, and he made arrangements to see a rheumatologist. I got very lucky because
Wow.
he spoke with his doctor, and we have like an amazing team of doctors at Princeton Medical Group. They're just like so knowledgeable and just really on top of things, and they genuinely care.
Mm.
And my dad has been going there for 2 decades, so everybody knows him. And so they got me an appointment, and they ran some labs, and they're like, yeah, something is definitely off. And so they sent me to go see a rheumatologist in the practice, and she was like, yeah, I hate to tell you this, but I'm pretty sure you have lupus. And I'm like, what is
Right.
lupus? I'd never even heard of it before. And shortly after that, I spent about a week and a half in the hospital,
Mm.
just having all sorts of tests run just to make sure that it was lupus and nothing else. And it definitely was. And for me, lupus affects my kidneys the most. And so I was diagnosed with a mid-range of kidney lupus. Lupus nephritis is what they call it. So I have a rheumatologist that I see pretty regularly, I'd say quarterly at this point, and a kidney doctor who I basically keep on speed dial in case anything is
Oh,
slightly
man.
off.
Wow.
I message him. I'm like, what is happening? And he's very attentive and very smart. So when I'm starting to flare, a lot of times it starts out in the form of extreme fatigue.
Mm.
And then I notice that like my joints start to hurt when I'm practicing yoga. If it doesn't feel right, I know that something is definitely brewing and that I need to kind of scale it back and take a back seat and, make a phone call, stay home the next day and just rest my body. And having that awareness, it's really been such a useful tool in kind of being able to stay ahead of the
Yeah.
lupus. And one thing that's really challenging is that it's so random. It literally can affect any part of the body. And so I had no idea, but lupus was actually affecting my heart. And so I had a really bad episode of inflammation where I gained 35 pounds of fluid, and I just assumed it was my kidneys. And my kidney results came back like relatively normal, like nothing drastic from what they had seen in previous tests. And so because the flare was so severe, despite the medication getting me back to normal, my kidney doctor suggested that I get some CT scans done. And in doing so, they noticed that I had a tear in my ascending aorta and an aneurysm 8 centimeters in size. So I get a call from both
Gosh.
my kidney doctor and a cardiologist one morning. They're like, you need to go to the ER right now. And I was like, the ER? And they're like, you need emergency open heart surgery. And I was just like, wow. Like the day before, I was in the yoga room doing my practice, feeling great. And then the next day, like I get this call. They're like, your aneurysm could rupture and you could die. And so I was like, okay, uh, like
Wow.
how do I handle this now? Um, I'm very stubborn though, and I like to take time to make peace with situations. And so I made them a promise that I would come in for just like a conversation and figure out next steps, but that I wasn't going to spend the weekend in the hospital. They wanted to monitor me throughout the weekend, and I basically refused and said I need to stay home and just like meditate on this and figure it out and like calm
Mm.
my mind and set myself up for success for something that's going to be such a major operation. And so they agreed to let me stay home as long as I bought a blood pressure monitor to monitor my blood pressure. So I did that. And then at the end of the weekend, Sunday night, I had admitted myself into the ER. And 3 days later, I had the operation. So lupus is an
Whew.
invisible disease. I mean, if you look at me, I don't ever look sick. When I'm flaring and it's, fluid retention, it's very obvious that I'm not myself. But even then, people still can't necessarily tell that anything is wrong. I can tell because my clothes are fitting differently and my shoes feel tight and, my body's not moving as well. But yeah, it's just one of those things that it can affect the brain, it can affect your heart, it can literally just affect anything. And I truthfully feel very blessed that, I've had such an amazing team of doctors in my back pocket, really helping me to work through these various obstacles. I'd say over the last 7 years, after my diagnosis, I've probably been in the hospital three times,
Mm.
two flares, and then one open heart surgery. So in general, I've been able to really navigate it for the most part on my own with just like rest and time and listening to my body. But it's definitely a mental struggle more so than anything else. And I realize the more that I can make peace with whatever flare I'm going through or whatever the situation is, the faster I'll heal myself. So the more that initially I used to stress over it. I'm like, oh, I need to be back in the yoga studio or I
Mhm.
have this content
Mhm.
shoot or a photo shoot. And it's like, no, this is the reality right now. Just let it go, make peace,
Mm.
and I tend to heal a lot faster in that regard, which is kind of nice.
Yeah, I remember this last time you and I talked around you're on your own timeline, it feels. And even in like the way you talk and the rhythm of how you talk, I'm noticing calm. Like I really notice you being calm, and I don't wanna say slow in a bad way, but just deliberate. Um, and I remember after the last time that we talked and thinking about my own body awareness, and that I've been trying more and more to be, more connected with my body
Mhm.
and take cues from my body. And I see you as someone who is such a master in being able to do that. I imagine in part because of your diagnosis and in part because of your love for ballet and yoga where you're asking so much of your body. Um, and I've had a couple of weeks of not feeling good, physically, and for a variety of reasons. But I've been thinking a lot about just listening to my body
Mhm.
and how it has required that I slow down to do that is like the first thing that I've noticed myself needing to do is slow down, to listen and to notice and to feel the things. Um, and the other thing has been around movement. It has
Mhm.
been around stretching. I did kids yoga with my 4-year-old the other
Ah,
day. I actually did it by
good.
myself. He said he was gonna do it, but every time I looked at him, he was not doing it. So I did kids yoga, and just moving my body in that way. And I wouldn't say, like, I didn't do it enough, I don't think, for it to, like, help long term. Certainly, I notice the various aches and pains might have been a little bit less that day type of thing. But, what it did force me to do was evaluate how my body is moving, how my body is stretching. What does it feel like when it's stretching? Does this feel pained? Does this feel tight? Does this feel good? Does this feel
Hmm.
horrible? Do I feel embarrassment that, like, I can't do this thing right now? Um, and so it's really been a bit of a gift, I think, to be able to start considering my body more intentionally and, spending more time with myself. One of the things suffer from really bad, gastric reflux and heartburn,
Mm.
and to the point where I vomit when I have heartburn, and I it takes my body out for a full day, a full 24 hours. I have to be in bed,
Okay.
basically forcing myself to sleep because the pain is so bad, and there's nothing that helps in the moment. But then the whole next day, I feel like I have a hangover. And you were talking about, aspects of what you experience and just noticing that you need sometimes a little bit more time to just rest and just be in bed, and I've been thinking about that too because it's so out of the norm. I For me, certainly, but I think for us as a population, Black women, to take any bit of extra time for healing.
Hmm.
I mean, we have a cold and we're sick and okay, fine. Somebody has convinced us to stay home, take some medicine, and be in bed for a day. But the moment that we no longer have a fever, or the
Yeah.
moment
Yeah.
that, our night sweats clear up, we're back at it again. Um, and my body can no longer handle that. It cannot. I mean, even today, so yesterday I had heartburn. Today I went to the doctor this morning, and have really just needed to take it easy.
Yeah.
Um, and it's felt really freeing to do that
Hmm.
without guilt.
Yes.
You had said, what did you say? Something about where you ended was sometimes you just have to take, that extra day or whatever it's going to be. And instead of trying to push yourself to get back in the studio or push yourself to get back into the office, you just accept where you're at in that day. And that might mean that in that day you need to rest. And I think as we're talking about pouring into ourselves, for me in this year, that is one of the major perspective changes that I have to have is that I can't be on external schedules. I have to
No.
be on my own body's schedule.
No, 100%. I mean, like you said, it's sometimes hard to, take that step back and set that boundary, but you're the only one who's going to suffer in the end. And I've realized that over time. Like, while everyone else is off living their best lives, I'm just home in bed with a flare for like a week and a half. And it's not how I want to be living my life. So it's better to take that 1.5 extra days, sometimes 2 days of just complete rest so you can get back into your life the way you want to. And I think that's just, it's finding that balance. Without being able to find the balance, it makes life challenging for anyone, truthfully, not just someone with a chronic illness, but really anyone. And, you know, holiday season especially is super challenging.
Mhm,
And I felt like I was running ragged, just subbing yoga classes all over Manhattan. And Manhattan is like a go, go, go place. And Christmas Day came and I said, "Family, I love you, but like I'm going to sleep a lot today and I will see you when I see you." And, they were totally fine with it. They understood it. And I think just being able to advocate for yourself is so important in no matter what you're doing, whether it's, work, family, friends. My best friends know, like, sometimes I might commit to something 2 weeks ahead of time, and then the day of, I'm like, yeah, this isn't happening today. Like, I love you. Call me if you want to talk or whatever, but I don't have it in me to show up right now. And, they understand. And if anyone can't understand, it's not someone that you want in your life. I've had to let go of friends who just couldn't figure it out and we're just very selfish about it. And I'm like, no, I need to take this time for myself. I'm like, this has nothing to do with you or our relationship. But without setting those boundaries and just speaking up for yourself, it's you set yourself up for disaster if you don't do those two things.
Yeah, and I am learning more and more that the boundaries that I have don't have to be because what am I trying to say? During times where I do need to back out of a commitment that I've made, it I can do that even if I'm not, like, sick. Like, it used to be that there's gotta be a really damn good reason why, like, I'm not participating or showing up how I said I was gonna show up or following through with the commitment, and I'm releasing that as well, acknowledging that if I'm there, then it's already too late, then I've already pushed myself too far,
Hmm.
because for me, I do have when I get stressed, when I get anxious, when I get overly active in my life, I get sick. And so usually, like if I need to be thinking about canceling stuff before before I get sick. Um,
Totally.
and now I'm at the point, of course, of just not scheduling how I used to schedule.
Hmm.
Limiting, for example, the amount of talking meetings that I have in a day, and limiting the amount of social interactions that I have in a week, so that I'm not overextending myself and not having to go back then and cancel. But even on times when I do need to cancel, giving myself the grace and, like you said, surrounding myself with friends who also value their well-being and aren't taking it as some type of statement about our friendship or about them as the
Yeah.
friend when I need
Yeah.
to do something different that day.
No, totally. I mean, if anyone's taking it personally, it's like, well, that's on you. Like, this is what I need to do for me, and I'm okay with that, and they need to be okay with it too. And I think, too, over time, like my closest friends, they've seen what I've gone through and like have come to the hospital to visit me.
Mhm.
And so it's like, no, we get it. If you need this time, you need this time and take all the time you need.
Yeah.
So I'm grateful for finally being able to find my voice in that regard. It took a long time. I'm such a people pleaser and
Ugh.
want to be everywhere, doing everything for everyone. I'm like the biggest giver possible. And I'm like, if I'm not getting anything back in return, like I can't keep giving, 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 and just, feel like I'm falling up short and falling empty. And so
Yeah.
it's all about the boundaries and the
And
balance.
our as a old 37-year-old, like, I just, like, I'm so much more limited in
Oh my
everything,
God,
in the
yeah.
energy that I can give you, like, I am just so much more limited, in the stamina for life than I was in my 20s when I could be a people pleaser and all over the place and doing all the things. Um
100%.
so I want to talk about yoga because I'm very interested in yoga. I have enjoyed yoga and I have not enjoyed yoga. My kind of first experiences with yoga was in hot yoga. And so when you talked about that,
Mm.
you noticed that you weren't sweating, like my mouth dropped because how? Like, how could you not? sweat in hot yoga.
Mm.
Um, I remember my first couple of classes, me and my friend Sasha went, and, like, we were throwing up, like, it was I mean, like, hot yoga is so intense, but it's like a good burn as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
Like, I really like it. But I haven't been in years because I don't know. I don't know why. I think I'm a little bit intimidated by it right now. But anyways, so you are a yoga teacher, and are you still doing competitive yoga?
No, I stopped that in end of 2018. I made it to the international competition in Beijing, and I was like, I think I'm good now. Like, I made it to the internationals, I don't think I need to do anymore.
Well, I mean, what you're able to do is like, out of this world amazing. I encourage folks to look at Victoria's website, victoriagibbs.com or yoga, okay.
VictoriaGibbsYoga.com. Yeah.
victoriagibbsyoga.com, and you'll see all of her poses. I mean, all of her body parts are able she can bend backwards and touch all the body parts to like, it's amazing.
Thank you.
And, I know that your ballet passion kind of turned into a yoga passion, and that yoga for you has become a medicine, both in terms of your physical wellness, but also in terms of your mental wellness and the meditation, and spiritual components that yoga brings. I'm wondering, how do you keep yoga fun for you?
Mhm.
How do you keep the passion when it's so much a part of your life. It's a part of your healing regimen. It's a part of how you get paid and how you're able to live in Long Island. It's a part of all of these other very serious parts of your life, and then also you entered it with this passion. So, is it still fun for you? And if so, how do you keep it fun?
It is still fun for me. I think yoga, I mean, it's a little cliche, but just like anything else, it's a journey. And so I find so much intrigue in seeing the things that my body can do. And I mean, I turn 40 next year. And so sometimes I'm like a little bit surprised
Mhm.
that it's still doing all the things that it can. But again, to that point, I think, there are just so many benefits to the yoga that having a consistent practice just excites me. I look forward to getting on my mat, not every day, but most days. I do require a day of rest.
Mhm.
um, but just the feeling that I have during the practice, it's the most meditative thing. As soon as I step onto my mat, I just feel like the world has disappeared around me and I am just so centered and at peace.
Mm.
I just feel this immense sense of calm just kind of come over my entire body. And I look forward to that feeling because, in a world of complete chaos and just craziness, to find that element of calm and peace just from standing on your yoga mat really just feels so amazing. I mean, I look forward to seeing my various teachers. I look forward to seeing the community. And it has become such a special community for me. Some of my
Mm.
best friends I met in the yoga room. And so to look forward to exploring these relationships, meeting new faces, meeting new people, teaching people what I love so most about my practice and the journey of yoga is just so rewarding. I love trying to help people deepen their practice. I love giving people the tools to understand the practice. I think a lot of times people shy away from yoga because they're not given the right cues or the right resources
Mm.
to kind of help progress their practice or help them understand it. And so it leaves them feeling a bit intimidated. And, you know, I don't expect anyone to get on their mat and do a full split and back bend and grab their ankle and think, this is yoga practice. Like what I do borders a little bit on contortion sometimes, just with how flexible I truly am.
Mm-hmm.
But I think for people, just being able to see what the body is capable of, and for me in particular, seeing that just keeps me motivated, keeps me driven, keeps me excited, and just keeps me feeling so good. I mean, if I could wake up at 5:30 every morning and take a yoga practice by 6 a.m., I'd be like, I am so ready for the day. But I spread it out. Some days noon, some days 7 p.m. Like it really depends on what's going on
Yeah.
with my schedule and how much sleep I've gotten the night before. But there's just something about it that keeps it exciting, keeps me coming back for more, keeps me interested in what I'm doing. And just that process and the journey and seeing a lot of my fellow peers over the last, decade and a half, just seeing everyone's journey with it is always so inspirational, and there's always something more you can be working on. It never gets stale, it never gets stagnant. There's always more, which is something that I need. I'm someone who's
Mm.
very driven. I need to, you know not be the best or be perfect, but just see what my body can genuinely do. And with that, it has also just been the most wonderful medicine for me, and as far as my mental health and my physical health.
Yeah. I remember being excited to go back to my yoga class to see, like, how much more I could stretch type of thing. And
Hmm.
I don't know if that's to some extent what you're talking about, but even just, I could definitely notice when I was doing yoga regularly that every time I went back, there was a change.
Yeah,
And it was noticeable. I mean, sometimes you're practicing something, and you're doing things and you're not seeing changes until all of a sudden there's a huge change. And for me with yoga, it was incremental, and there was excitement for me when I was going back to be able to do something a little bit deeper or hold it a little bit longer or even just last in the hot yoga room. Like the first time that I was
totally.
able to just like actually do a full thing, cycle, or practice without,
Whole
like,
class, yeah.
resting in between, or, like, bowing out of one of the positions was, like, a huge deal for me. Um, so, yes, I can kind of relate, perhaps a little bit to that. Um, and I wonder one of the things, and we touched on this a little bit earlier, but that I keep going back to with myself and in my conversations with others is on the focus of minimizing stress and releasing control so that we can be free. Like in some respect, I think liberation for Black women for me feels like a not only an external freedom, free from everybody else's expectations, but
Hmm.
also an internal freedom that I think maybe feels like acceptance. It feels like, what we talked about earlier with needing rest and taking the rest and accepting that that's where we're at today. Um, and I'm wondering for you, because it's very apparent that you lead your life in a way to minimize your stress and
Yeah.
to give up control. And I imagine because if you didn't, you would be sick all the time.
Totally.
And so I wonder, how has this outlook changed your life or impacted your life and your health?
I definitely wasn't always this way. Um, I think that once I left the hedge fund at the end of 2018, or was it early 2019, something like that, um, I made a point to always lead my life with positivity. So I work to see the good in every situation, no matter how challenging it is. I find the bright light of the situation and just turn anything negative into a positive. And so I think it started from there, just shifting my mindset in that regard. And, I began journaling a lot to really kind of cement that thought process into my head on a regular basis to the point where eventually it just became like very natural to me to feel this way. And in doing so, I was able to take that same thought process onto my mat. And so, it wasn't about having a perfect practice for the day. It's just, you showed up today, and that's
Mm,
all that matters.
yeah.
No matter how much you do on your mat, you're here, and like let go of the rest, and whatever your body does for today is perfectly fine. Because mentally and physically, we're so different every day. But if you can always find that time to lead with grace and positivity, and always, I say, stay towards the light, you will
Mm,
really set yourself up for success in so many regards. And so over time, that then became me focusing a lot more on just breathing. And
mm,
so when I did teacher training the summer of 2019, it really helped to cement the importance of
yeah.
meditation and the calming effect that it truly has. And, so much of our lives is spent like chest breathing. Everything is, stress and just chaos, that if you can find that moment to just, even if it's 2 minutes, just sit down, close your eyes, and take like 5 deep inhale breaths, you will feel that much calmer. And that is just basically how I move through life. I am very calm to the point where people are like, you just radiate Zen. And
Yeah.
I'm like, good, that's what I've been working
Yeah.
towards. So I'm happy to hear that. I truthfully don't let anything stress me out. I realize that, you know, all we can do is control what is in our own hands. We can't control external factors. I can't be stressed about the rain. I can't be stressed about what someone else is doing. All I know is that this is what I'm doing. And if I feel good and I can, look at the bright side of the situation, then that's all I can do. And so it's taken multiple years to get to this place, and I think it's just like it's helped me navigate the lupus so much, because if I was living a stressful life filled with anxiety and just constant worry about how am I going to pay my bills, or how am I going to figure this out, or I'm not married yet, why, like what's happening, like all that stuff, it doesn't matter. Like all I'm doing is my best every single day, and that's all that I can do, and the rest will come when it's time. And I truly believe nothing happens before it's time. And so you know, you just have to take every day one breath at a time, one step at a time, and not try to look at your whole laundry list of things you want to accomplish, but just today I'm going to pick this one thing and I'm going to focus on that. If I do it, great. If I don't, there's always tomorrow. It's just, it's coming from a place of constant compassion for yourself.
Mm. I really appreciate that. I appreciate both we're literally just taking it very granularly throughout our day. We are thinking about now, we are thinking about our breath, we are thinking about, our practice for this next 45 minutes, we're thinking about this next task. And we are approaching all of this with compassion for self. And yeah, okay, compassion for other people too, fine. But like, primarily, and for me, where I'm at in my life, because this is my year of not caring about other people and caring about myself, is,
Hmm.
compassion for self, for me to show up how I need to show up, whether I need to show up,
Hmm.
on my terms, and acknowledging that there's still, yes, I have responsibilities. Yes, I got bills. I got whole children to raise and get to and from school and all of that. Um, and there's a lot of my identity, a lot of what makes me me, that has a lot of space and a lot of room for compassion and for listening to self, and um, taking it with ease.
Hmm.
And so I'm you are definitely a reminder of that, and it does feel very zen, sharing space with you and having this conversation. So I'm really grateful to you for giving us this time and sharing with us your journey. Um, would you like to share with us where we can find you, and if you have anything upcoming or anything going on that folks can plug into?
Yeah, I mean, you can find me on my website, which is victoriagibbsyoga.com. And I'm big presence on social media on Instagram. My handle is WHATGIBBS. So what Gibbs, my last name. Lots of yoga content. I'm always teaching classes around the city. So if you're here in Manhattan, come and find me and practice with me. Not everything is as insane as it looks on my page.
Right, don't be
I
scared.
teach for all levels.
Don't be scared.
I welcome everyone to just show up on their mat and just do their best. That's all you can ever ask of yourself. I don't expect people to come in having a perfect practice. That's not what it's about. I mean, just that it's a practice, and just one class at a time. The most important thing is just showing up for yourself, no matter what that is. If you want to take a walk that day, or no one says you have to necessarily take a yoga class, but while it's worked for me, maybe just like gentle walking is uh, a great resource for someone else. I mean, there are just so many things that we can do to really better our mental and physical health, and it's just finding the thing that works for you. I mean, I have gone through a plethora of things. I mean, I do a lot externally outside of yoga to kind of maintain my overall well-being, including like cold plunge therapy and a little bit of acupuncture and things like that here and there. But um, yeah, just showing up for yourself and advocating for yourself. And you know, I always just look at things one thing at a time. I look at my weekly schedule. I'm like, no, no, what's the next thing? And then I'll worry about the next thing after
Yeah.
that. I'm like, I can't look at this whole thing and digest it, because if I do, my mind will be racing all night. And uh, just finding moments of mindfulness, whether it's journaling. I remember before my heart surgery, I sky gazed. I watched the sun rise that morning and the clouds part, and I just felt such an immense sense of calm just come over me. I
Wow.
had never been more ready for such a major operation in my life. I was like, yeah, wheel me out, I'm ready to go. So just finding little nuggets to kind of really cultivate that extra sense of self-care, whether it's a nice long hot bath at the end of the night, or it runs the whole spectrum, but just do something. You only have yourself to blame if you do nothing. So
Yeah.
just carve out the time, 5 minutes, 1 minute, any minute, it's good. Just do something, as I always like to say.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Victoria, for being on with us today.
Thank you for having me. This was wonderful.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Impostrix Podcast. I hope that you got what you needed. If you're ready for more, feel free to go through the other 3 seasons worth of amazing episodes that we've put together for you. I want to hear from you. I want to know how you related to this episode. So if you're listening on Spotify, feel free to answer the question or send a text. You can do that through your Spotify app. If you're listening elsewhere, make sure that you follow me on Instagram at Impostrix Podcast. And if you like to text, go ahead, go to the show notes, look for the link for the WhatsApp community, because we just got it started this season for season 4, and I love to chat, so hit me up. Also, thank you to Chris at Digital REM for editing this episode. Until next time, be validated.